Have you ever been in a conversation where, even though you said everything you intended to, you still walked away feeling like you'd lost? Have you ever had that tightness in your throat, like each word spoken only pulled you further from your own power? Maybe you're surrounded by people who talk over others, who interrupt, mock, and dominate spaces with arrogance masked as confidence. And maybe, somewhere inside, you thought that staying quiet meant weakness, that not speaking up was giving in, that not responding was the same as losing. But what if I told you that all of that was an illusion, that real strength was never in the words themselves, but in the silence between them? Nietzsche, often one of the most misinterpreted thinkers in all of history, recognized something that few dare to acknowledge. Those who speak excessively end up exposing too much. Those who feel the need to persuade are already placed at a disadvantage. Society teaches us that we must argue, justify ourselves, and defend our beliefs as if every exchange were a battlefield for truth. Yet nature offers something else entirely, a subtler, more dangerous, and vastly more intelligent alternative. He saw silence not merely as the lack of sound, but as a dominating force. Silence unsettles, it unbalances, it compels the other to face themselves. This video is for you, who constantly feels ignored, overshadowed, invalidated. For you, who leaves conversations with the feeling that no one really heard what you meant to say. For you, who is tired of being the easy target, the nice one, the one who tries to keep the peace while others take advantage of your calm. Perhaps you have confused your silence with submission, but today I will show you that silence can be your most powerful weapon, and that true victory does not come from winning an argument, but from never needing to enter one. Get ready to see silence in a new light, not as an absence of response, but as the definitive response. Let's dive into nature's ideas and discover how to master any situation without saying a single word. Why do we feel compelled to respond, to correct, to argue, to prove we're right? Deep down, it's because we've been taught that truth must be defended fiercely, that silence means surrender, that letting things go is letting someone else win. But Nietzsche saw this urge as a reflection of something much deeper, our fear of seeming weak. And at the root of that fear sits the ego, fragile, restless, unable to bear being questioned. It mistakes disagreement for hostility and turns every exchange into a battleground. Nietzsche believed that most people, when they argue, aren't really searching for truth. They're searching for dominance. They want to reaffirm their views, not because those views are unshakable, but because they fear what might collapse. If they're challenged, in that light, argumentation stops being a tool of insight. It becomes a shield, a cry from the ego, desperate to stay in control. And what does this imply? That the moment you feel the urge to explain yourself, to prove your stance, you've already stepped into their arena and lost. Because the mere impulse to justify reveals a lingering need, the need to be seen, to be understood, to be accepted. This is what Nietzsche referred to as herd morality, the mindset of those who live for others' approval, who strive to be viewed as just, correct, moral. But it's this very chase for validation that keeps you weak. According to Nietzsche, real strength isn't found in persuading others. It's found in not needing to. It's in holding your truth, even when it's met with mockery, rejection, or silence. It's in standing firm while being misunderstood. What Nietzsche offers is a vision of power not based on verbal wins, but on inner dominance, the kind of power that holds steady as the world around you spirals, the kind that grows when you stop reacting. If victory is what you truly want, then know this: debate is a stage, and the moment you step into the spotlight, you've already conceded. Nietzsche recognized that the reactive mind is already subdued. It's the mind that watches, that observes without need to defend, that holds the real danger because it's free from the compulsion to prove. But then, if reaction is weakness, how do we exert influence over others? If language fails us, How do we express strength without a single word? Nietzsche's answer lies in the concept of the Übermensch, the one who rises above conventional morality and controls the world through unwavering self-mastery. In the next part, we will explore this figure and understand how it embodies the strategic use of silence as a weapon of dominance. Are you ready for this level? Because from here on out, silence begins to speak. If you find this content valuable, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. Friedrich Nietzsche did not address the multitudes. His words were never intended to soothe the crowd or comfort the average soul. He wrote for a different kind of person, a rare soul, someone willing to face the unbearable mirror of the self, to dive headfirst into suffering, to confront inner chaos and emerge not broken but remade. For Nietzsche, humanity at large was asleep, bound by inherited conventions, trapped in moral cages, and hopelessly addicted to applause and affirmation. Most people live on autopilot, echoing the expectations of society, reacting blindly to every external stimulus, tethered to the illusions of virtue, validation, and shared delusions. But Nietzsche envisioned another type of human being entirely, something rare, dangerous, free, the Übermensch, the Overman. Not a man of his time, but beyond it, a creator of new values, a being who doesn't reflect the world, but carves it into shape with his will. And perhaps what is most unsettling about the Übermensch is not what he says, but what he withholds. It is his silence that cuts deepest. You see, the Übermensch does not chase after victories in petty debates. He doesn't descend into emotional games or verbal theatrics. He doesn't need to win arguments or prove his worth. He sees through the charade. Instead, he watches. He calculates. He knows precisely when to speak, and more importantly, when to remain silent. This silence is not emptiness. It is not hesitation. It is deliberate. It is a language unto itself. One that does not persuade, it commands. One that does not explain, it unsettles. His silence carries the weight of self-mastery, the gravity of a mind that no longer needs external affirmation. While others shout to be heard, the Übermensch gazes, and that gaze alone disarms. While people scramble to justify their existence through noise, he simply is, and that being, that silent presence, disturbs the foundations of those still trapped in noise. His silence becomes a fortress. Others beat against it, desperate to decipher its meaning, and in their frantic attempts to fill the void he leaves, they reveal their weaknesses. They expose too much. They grow anxious, disoriented, because the one who does not respond becomes a mirror in which others see their own chaos reflected. Silence, then, is not passivity. It is power restrained. It is control over one's emotional and intellectual energy. It is strategic economy. Nietzsche's Overman understands. Each word spoken is a piece of the self handed over. Each reaction is a step outside sovereignty. And so he guards his expressions as one guards a throne, not because he has nothing to offer, but because he sees no need to waste his essence on the unworthy. He does not seek to prove anything, for what needs proving has already been compromised. His presence speaks in ways louder than any monologue, and this, perhaps, is his greatest act of defiance, to simply exist without explanation, to say nothing and say everything. In an age of compulsive noise, in a world where everyone is shouting to be seen, the one who masters silence becomes king. The one who refuses to react holds the leash of power. Because silence is not emptiness, it is fullness contained. Nietzsche's vision of the Übermensch is not merely someone strong, it is someone sovereign, someone who creates their own values from the ashes of the old, someone who no longer answers to inherited morality. He cannot be manipulated through guilt. He is immune to fear. He does not crave acceptance because he has transcended the need for it, and that is why the world fears him. Because an individual who cannot be controlled, who does not need anything from you, becomes a terrifying force. His silence is not withdrawal, it is defense. It is armor against manipulation. It is the rejection of the demand to explain oneself to the herd. And when he does finally speak, it is not to join the chorus, it is to silence it. But why does this silence disturb so many? Why does it provoke unease, even fear, in those who encounter it? What is it about someone who simply refuses to react that causes others to unravel? The answer lies not in metaphysics, but in psychology. Humans are social creatures. Our brains are wired for feedback, for signals, for mirrored behavior. We rely on the reactions of others to calibrate our sense of reality, to affirm our emotions, to feel seen. Silence breaks this loop. It removes the mirror. It leaves us alone with ourselves, and many cannot bear that. When we expect confrontation and instead receive stillness, we're forced inward. The silence becomes a space where our insecurities echo back at us. The mind, unanchored by external cues, starts projecting. It fills the silence with fear, suspicion, doubt. And in that space of uncertainty, people reveal who they truly are. They stumble. They speak too much. They confess without being asked. The Übermensch knows this. He does not use silence as an escape, but as a weapon. He wields it like a blade, cutting through layers of pretense, because what you do in the face of silence reveals you. It exposes your desperation for validation, your addiction to being heard, your dependency on reaction. Silence, in this sense, is the domain of the strategist. It is not the absence of action, but the highest form of intentionality. It is the art of not revealing. It is the stillness before the strike, and only the one who has mastered himself can wield it effectively. To walk the path of the Übermensch is to renounce the compulsion to perform. It is to stop playing the game of social theatrics. It is to become a black hole in a universe of stars, drawing attention not by light, but by gravitational pull, by density, by presence. Nietzsche's philosophy does not offer comfort, it offers clarity. The Übermensch is not a goal for the masses. He is a beacon for the few, the ones who dare to step beyond guilt and herd morality, the ones who reject the morality of the weak, the ones who have learned that to say nothing is sometimes the greatest form of resistance. We live in an age addicted to visibility. We believe that expression equals power, but perhaps true power lies elsewhere, not in the ability to speak, but in the strength to remain silent until the moment is ripe. And when that moment comes, the words strike with the force of destiny. In a culture drowning in noise, be the stillness that unnerves. In a world that demands constant explanation, be the question that remains unanswered. In a time of fragile egos and shallow outrage, embody the presence that needs no defense. Be silent, not because you are empty, but because you are full. And that is exactly what we will explore in the next part. Because to understand the power of silence, we first need to understand the chaos it generates in the minds of others. And believe me, it is much deeper than it seems. Silence isn't merely the lack of sound, it's a mirror, one that for many reflects what they'd rather not see. When you choose not to respond, you're not only withholding your voice, you're compelling the other person to sit with their own words, to confront their own thoughts without the cushion of opposition. And that unsettles, because most people don't speak to be understood. They speak to shield themselves, to reassure their own doubts, to bridge the gap between their speech and their identity. So when you offer silence, the mask begins to slip. Studies in psychology have long confirmed that during confrontation, silence is read as judgment. It makes no difference if you're only listening. The speaker starts to feel naked, unsure. Why? Because your lack of reaction strips them of control over the story. The brain enters alert mode. The amygdala, The hub of fear and anxiety fires up. The other person starts projecting, is he judging me? Did he catch my hesitation? Does he know I'm faking it? And in this psychological standoff, silence becomes an invisible blade. It cuts where it's not seen, but where it's always felt. Nietzsche recognized this well before modern science did. He saw that the ordinary person lives enslaved to their own reactions, acting on impulse, speaking out of vanity, reacting from the fear of being ignored. But the higher individual, the one in control of themselves, chooses silence, knowing that every spoken word is a piece of strategy surrendered. Every emotional outburst is an unintended signal, revealing exactly where to strike. Manipulators especially crumble before silence. Their power thrives on provoking a reaction. If you don't give it to them, the game collapses. Without your response, their position has no anchor. They unravel, exposing the fragility they've worked to conceal. But silence reaches even deeper. It stirs old wounds, unhealed rejections, buried humiliations, forgotten abandonments, because suddenly the speaker realizes they are not the center. Their words do not command attention. Their presence no longer holds sway. For the ego, especially the narcissistic kind, this is unbearable. So when you stay quiet, you aren't merely defending yourself, you're striking at the heart of the illusion. That's why silence demands strength. It feels unnatural, not just to others, but to you, because it pushes against the grain, against the instinct to reply, to explain, to defend. But that discomfort is exactly where its power lies. It requires discipline, and discipline is true power. Now that you grasp what silence does inside another's mind, how it unsettles, dismantles, and reveals, it's time to elevate your approach, stop observing, and start wielding. In the next part, you'll learn to turn silence into a deliberate tool, a strategic weapon. You'll learn how to win battles without uttering a word. And once you master that, no one will ever hold power over you again. There comes a moment in every person's journey when it's no longer enough to just understand the power of silence. That understanding must be embodied, wielded, refined into a weapon. Knowing without using is a corpse of wisdom, a theory buried, alive, and from this moment forward you are no longer just a thinker. You become a practitioner, a silent warrior, one who does not react, one who chooses. Silence is no longer your defense. It becomes your sword, not held passively like a shield to block words, but drawn precisely, sharp, deliberate, and effective. The first step on this path is as simple as it is ruthless. Remain silent when every part of you screams to respond. And that takes strength, because your ego will rage. It will claw to be heard, to be validated, to defend itself against insult, accusation, misunderstanding. But that urge, that's not power. That's bondage. That's the need to prove. Yourself still anchoring you to others' approval. It's a chain that keeps you enslaved to someone else's game. Nietzsche understood this better than most. He spoke of the will to power, not over others, but over oneself. To rule your own instincts, to become the master of your reactions. Every time you resist the pull to justify, you announce, not to them but to yourself, that you owe no explanations, that your truth doesn't tremble in silence, it stands in it. The second power of silence is observation, and this is where your silence becomes alive. Not empty, not hollow, but alert, listening not just with ears, but with intent, while others fill the room with noise, explaining, defending, overcompensating. You watch, you study, but you don't just hear words, you dissect them. You tune into the pauses, the hesitations, the slips. You begin to hear the truth behind the truth, the fear hiding under the arrogance, the uncertainty dressed up as confidence. You listen not like a participant, but like a predator. You hear weakness where others hear volume, and when you do speak, if you speak, your words will strike like precision steel, not because they are louder, but because they are chosen with surgical focus, because they land where they are least expected and where they hurt the most. This brings us to the third element, time. Learn to let silence linger. The pause holds tension, and tension holds power. As the other person talks, anticipating your response that never arrives, they start to unravel inside. Discomfort builds, and their mind rushes to fill the emptiness with doubt, fear, and paranoia. A single glance from you, wrapped in silence, can strike deeper than 10 perfectly crafted sentences. You must learn to stretch the silence, to hold it like a weapon drawn but unused. The longer it lasts, the more powerful it becomes. In that stillness, something begins to unravel, not in you, but in them. As they wait for your reply, your judgment, your validation, what they hear is the echo of their own mind. Their insecurities start speaking louder than your words ever could. Paranoia fills the gaps. Their mask begins to slip under the weight of nothing but your gaze. And in those moments, your silence becomes louder than any argument. You needn't even raise your voice. A single glance, measured, calm, unblinking, can crush a paragraph of justification. This is not about being cold. This is about being unshakable, and people fear most what they cannot shake. Now the fourth element, unpredictability. Silence makes you unreadable, and what is unreadable is feared. When people don't know your next move, they lose control of the game. They become cautious, calculating. Every word they say begins to carry hesitation. You, without speaking, shift the entire gravity of the conversation. You are no longer reacting. You are defining the terrain. And that's where real power lies. Silence here isn't absence. It's dominance. You don't withdraw from the battle. You control it from the shadows. But let me make something very clear. Silence is not passivity. It is not cowardice, and it is never resignation. Nietzsche never worshipped weakness. He despised it. The silence we're speaking of is active, focused, electrified with presence. You're not avoiding the fight. You're choosing the exact moment to strike, if you strike at all. There is a difference between being silent because you have nothing to say, and being silent because nothing needs to be said. And when the moment comes, after you've watched, after you've waited, after you've let their words tangle themselves, you can drop one sentence, one clear, undeniable truth, not shouted, not performed, just placed like a blade on the table. And in that moment, the discussion ends, not with noise, but with clarity. Because truth, when timed right, needs no volume. But here the story takes a darker turn. Because not all silence is power. Some silence is surrender. Some silence is despair. There are times when silence becomes the voice of someone who has lost control, someone who no longer knows how to fight, or even why they should. In those moments, silence isn't strength, it's resignation. A silent scream from someone who has become invisible even to themselves. And you must be able to tell the difference, because there will be situations, not arguments but emotional battlegrounds, where your silence is not strategy. It's the silence of someone being drained, gaslit, manipulated, played. You must learn to hear when your silence is no longer power, but submission, and in those moments speaking becomes your act of defiance. Because the real game isn't just about winning arguments. Sometimes it's about not losing yourself. Nietzsche didn't just challenge others, he challenged the self. He asked what lies beneath our masks, our identities, our noise. And sometimes the greatest power isn't saying less, but hearing yourself in the silence. If your silence is full of fear, break it. If your silence is full of truth, own it. That distinction is everything. So use silence, not to hide, not to retreat, but to wait, to see, to dominate when the time is right, and to walk away when the battle is not worth your soul, because in a world addicted to noise, the one who can remain silent, not out of fear but out of strength, is already the one who controls the room. And when you master that, you don't just win arguments, you transcend them. In the next part, we will expose this truth, Show how you may be being used and not even realize it, because while you think you are avoiding conflicts, someone may be building an empire on your silence, and Nietzsche already knew that. Is there anything more twisted than being silenced? Yes, being trained, conditioned, domesticated into believing that silence is the only noble path, that repressing your fury, backing down in arguments, avoiding any friction or disagreement, somehow makes you mature, that silence, even when it burns you inside, is the reflection of balance and inner strength. But what if I told you this was a lie? Not just any lie, but a trap, a seductive illusion passed off as virtue. Because often this kind of silence doesn't stem from wisdom. It's submission wearing the mask of peace. Nietzsche saw this dynamic with unflinching clarity. What society often praises as peace is nothing more than your tamed surrender. It's not balance. It's your quiet, unseen defeat. Look closer. Isn't it always the calmest, most tolerant, people who are expected to absorb the most disrespect, the ones who listen more than they speak, who stay calm during storms, who avoid confrontation even when wronged? Aren't they the ones most easily manipulated? Because your restraint, your civility, your quiet strength, they become weapons others use against you. They bulldoze over your boundaries with politeness. They push their will while you yield. They claim your space while you remain still. And you rationalize it. You tell yourself it's not worth the conflict, that keeping the peace is more valuable, that you're being the bigger person. But let's face it, that inner compromise is costing you more than you realize. You're paying for this illusion of harmony with your own power. And the cruelest part, you are being used, precisely because they know you won't push back. Nietzsche called this condition the morality of slaves, a value system born not from freedom, but from necessity. It's the ethic of the weak, forged as a strategy for survival in a world ruled by the strong. It teaches you to celebrate submission, to confuse meekness with virtue, to feel morally superior for not resisting, to feel good about being harmless. It's a moral code designed to keep you small while convincing you that your smallness is spiritual. But Nietzsche didn't write for those who wanted to remain shackled. He wrote for the ones who've had enough, for those who've caught on to the lie and refuse to be part of it anymore, for those who hear the voice inside that says, I am being used, and who decide to no longer be an accessory to their own exploitation. When you accept that type of silence, the one that feels like swallowing a scream, you unknowingly surrender the essence of your power. Piece by piece, you let go of yourself. You stop being your own and start becoming what others need from you. You're sculpted not by your will, but by their expectations. And that, Nietzsche would say, is the exact opposite of the will to power. The will to power isn't domination over others. It's self-mastery. It's the reclaiming of authorship over your story. It's about becoming the one who decides, not the loudest, not the most aggressive, but the one whose silence holds gravity, the one who can choose silence not because they're afraid, but because they owe no explanation, no justification, no apology. This toxic silence, the silence of submission, must end. It must die a dignified death, and from its ashes must rise a new silence, one born not from fear, but from presence. A silence that doesn't kneel, that doesn't seek approval, that doesn't diminish itself to make others comfortable. This is the silence of power. The silence of someone who knows who they are, who doesn't need to speak to be felt, who can alter the energy of a room just by walking into it. This is the silence Nietzsche would respect. Not the silence of shame, but the silence of sovereignty. How do you get there? How do you stop being a pawn in someone else's game and start playing your own? How do you shed this morality of submission and step into your presence with unshakable authority? Nietzsche offered an answer, the Übermensch, the Overman. We've spoken of him before, but now we need to go deeper. The Übermensch is not a superhero. He's not a god, not a tyrant. He is someone who has outgrown the herd, someone who has given birth to his own values, someone who has redefined morality, not through rebellion, but through transcendence. He is no longer controlled by fear, guilt, or societal approval. He does not need validation, because he is validation. His very existence becomes the standard. Becoming the Übermensch means dying to the parts of you that were built for pleasing others. The version of you that was easy to manipulate, that sought comfort in conformity, that feared judgment, that played small to be accepted. You must kill that part, mercilessly, deliberately, without apology. This death is painful, but from it emerges a new being, one who doesn't serve, who doesn't ask for permission to exist, who doesn't participate in the quiet rituals of collective submission. The Übermensch creates his own rhythm. His silence is not emptiness. It is charged with purpose. It speaks louder than noise. It makes others uncomfortable, not because it is aggressive, but because it cannot be controlled. You must stop giving yourself away for free. Stop sacrificing your truth for the illusion of peace. Stop calling your fear kindness. That is not kindness. It is cowardice, wrapped in politeness. And deep down, you know it. There is nothing noble about being a doormat. There is nothing enlightened about letting others trample your boundaries in the name of harmony. You are not being spiritual. You are being used. If you want to stop being used, you must stop being available to the world in the same way. You must change the contract, redraw the lines, speak when it matters, and be silent when you choose, not because you've been conditioned to think. Silence is noble, but because you've mastered the art of presence. This kind of silence doesn't beg for acceptance. It demands respect. But it all starts with a single recognition that you have been complicit in your own submission, that no one can use you unless you allow it, and the moment you see it, that's the turning point. Now you have a choice: return to the comfort of invisibility, or step into the fire of transformation. Nietzsche's call wasn't for the masses. It was for you, the individual who dares to step outside the herd, who dares to speak with silence. Who dares to become a law unto yourself? Don't let your silence be a prison. Make it your weapon. Make it your signature. Become the master of your presence and watch how the world shifts around you. In the next and final chapter, you will discover what it takes to embody this new type of human being, because the world does not need more talkers. It needs those who master silence and reign with it. We've arrived at the final moment, and now I need you to grasp this with absolute clarity. Silence does not mean absence. It isn't emptiness. It's not merely the pause between words. True silence is full presence. It is mastery embodied. It signals that you're no longer reacting to the world. You're shaping it just by being. Nietzsche didn't write for those satisfied with survival. He wrote for the ones who aim to transcend, for those brave enough to rip off the masks society has forced upon them, no matter how painful it may be. The silence of the Übermensch is not that of the fearful or the oppressed. It is the silence of a warrior who's already victorious before the first blow is struck. It is the calm of someone who no longer feels the need to prove anything, because they know who they are, and more importantly, they know what they're worth. Take a look at your life. How many times have you stayed silent out of fear, out of guilt, out of not wanting to cause waves? How many times have you allowed others to speak in your place, to choose your path, to silence your truth? Nature would say enough. Living in this way is an insult to existence itself. To accept that kind of silence is to betray yourself. From now on, your silence must change its meaning. It must no longer serve as retreat. It must become a quiet roar of strength, a line drawn, a declaration of identity, even if no one else comprehends it. Because your being doesn't need to be understood. It needs to be lived, and living it takes courage. Do you have that kind of courage? Then let it be known. Comment below. I choose the silence that commands respect, not just so I know you made it to the end, but so you can proclaim this vow aloud, to yourself and to the world. Words carry weight, even when they speak of silence. And don't stop here. The next video is crucial. It will build upon what you've taken in today and push your understanding even further. Watch it, not for me, but because you deserve to go beyond. And remember, the weak shout, the strong stay silent, and the wise, they choose when.